Happy New Year, everyone! I am so happy to see y'all. It feels good to be back. I took a week off to spend the holidays with my family and my loved ones, and y'all, it feels like an eternity. It really does feel like so long since we had our last visit together. So I am excited today. I am really looking forward to kicking off this new year with so many fun, brand new projects. I have a ton of ideas for us. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Today, we're going to spend some time with Michael out in the wood shop. He is going to help us build some really cool perpetual calendars. So we're going to build one for a wall as a wall hanging, and then we're going to make a desktop version. So y'all, I am so excited. Without further ado, let's head out into the shop and get to creating.
Our first project today is going to be a really cool perpetual calendar that's a wall hanging, and it is going to start with a whole bunch of math. And thank goodness for Michael and his mad math skills. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get a big giant piece of plywood. We're using, I believe this is 1/2 inch, and then Michael is using his fancy little compass here to draw us some perfect circles. Our first circle is 19 inches. Then we will make another one that is 15 inches and a smaller one that is 9 inches. Now that we have all of our circles drawn, we can go ahead and do a rough cut on these. So Michael is using the jigsaw to do this, and we aren't trying to cut these out perfectly. We're just doing a rough cut around the general shape. And then we will take these over to the bandsaw, do a little bit more of a precise cut on these, and then we'll take it over to the sander and sand these very precisely right down to the line so that in the end we get a perfect circle. Okay guys, so if you don't have a bandsaw, don't fret because you can actually cut this whole thing out with a jigsaw. So here we've got all of our circles cut out, and now we are going to move on to the next step, and that is taking them to the sander. And here Michael is just going to sand these down right to the line that we drew to get a very precise, perfectly round circle. I do recommend this step, but again, don't fret. If you don't have one, you can use a hand sander to do this. It may take you a little more time and a little more effort, but it can be done. Now that we have that job done, we're just going to go ahead and sand off all of that rough cut, just those rough edges on the very bottom to get this perfectly smooth. Woohoo! Big applause for Michael. Good job. Well done, sir. Okay, so next step, we're going to pre-drill a hole perfectly center in our round circle, our big round here. And then with a Forstner bit, we're just going to go ahead and just drill this all the way through. This is going to be for our dowel because you'll see what we need that for here in just a little bit. So that is what that circle is for. Now, this is going to be the bracket of sorts for our wall hanging calendar. So we're going to make a wall hanging calendar with moving components. So we wanted to pre-drill a hole in that, or just a little pocket for the dowel. Next, we are going to cut some windows out in this little bracket, and these windows are going to be how we can see our day and our month and whatnot in this. So Michael's going to, again, take his mad skills to the scroll saw and cut these little windows out for me. If y'all do not have a scroll saw, this step can be done with a jigsaw as well. You just drill your pilot hole and then insert your jigsaw into the pilot hole and cut the insides out. Just be very, very careful because I don't want anybody to lose any fingers in the making of this project. Alrighty, y'all. So let's go ahead and get moved on to our next step here. We are going to take this pattern. This part of the pattern is our grid lines to help us get all of our days of the month and our weekday and our month correctly placed on our wood round. So I'll kind of explain that just a little bit more in a few minutes. But what we need to do here is cut part of this pattern off so that when we place it on our wood round, we can see our edges perfectly. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out right to the cut line, and the cut line will be listed for y'all on the pattern. Alrighty, now it is time to start painting out all of our pieces. So this is the bracket that is going to house all of our wood rounds, and I'm just going to go ahead and stain this with some antiquing wax here. This is Waverly antiquing wax, and I did water this down just a little bit, and then I'm going to brush it all on, and I do kind of brush it on pretty heavily, and then I will come back in with a damp cloth and wipe any of the excess stain away, and then do some blending as well. I am going to go ahead and stain both front and backs of all four of these pieces, of these bracket pieces. And you don't necessarily have to paint the side that's facing inward, but I chose to just because I think for me, it just makes it feel more finished and complete. Okay, while we're painting here, I just wanted to take a second to let y'all know that the pattern for this perpetual clock will be available for y'all on my website, and I will have the link listed in the description box, and the pattern will include everything that you need, every piece and component, every pattern, everything that you need to complete this from start to finish. Okay, so for this step, I wanted to come in with some dry brushing to add some depth and some dimension to this. So I'm going to dry brush some black paint on this. This is just some black chalk paint that I had on hand. And when I brush this off, I am pretty light-handed with it. After I get it brushed on, while the paint is still wet, I'm going to take my clean cloth here and just blend all of that in. And you can see the difference. See how that just brings out so much of just the charm, I think, of this wood. It brings out a lot of the grain, the natural grain, but it just adds a lot of depth. And to complete the edges of this, I'm just going to take my brush with some dry brushing again, and I'm just going to flick the edges from the top inward with a pretty good flicky motion to kind of get these cool little lines, and it just gives it a little bit more of that aged look. All right, y'all. So now we're going to move on to getting some paint on our wood rounds here. We're going to go ahead and paint the months, the days of the week, and then the days of the month. And these little pieces here are the end pieces from our big round pattern that we cut. And I thought I was going to need them, but in the end, I did not need them at all. We just need this part right here, the inside part of our pattern. And you can see the little grid lines on here. And so what Michael has done is he came in and did all of the math, all of the geography. He took geometry. Goodness sakes, it's a good thing Michael did the math, right? Okay, so he took all the guesswork out of this for us and created these grids so that we will know exactly where to place all of our lettering and our numbers. So you can kind of see here what we're going for and what this is going to look like when it's done. So this smaller piece will have our weekdays on it. The middle piece will have our month on it. And then the outer piece will have the days of the month. And then we will be able to move these. Once it's completely assembled, these will be a movable working component here. And then the idea is to just put each specific day where we are in the day and the month and the week in our little windows. I think you guys kind of get it, right? Okay, let's move on to painting now. So one thing that did help me a lot when I was placing all of my numbers on here was to put the grid pattern down and then put the dowel in place, and this kept my pattern from moving all around. And this dowel is the center dowel that's going to hold all of our components in place. I went ahead and created all of my stencils on my silhouette cutter, and now I'm just going to go ahead and start placing them on the wood round and stencil it on with just some black chalk paint. So here is where that grid is very, very important, because it helps us line up our numbers exactly. And Michael did all the math so that this grid divided this big giant wood round. This is our 19-inch round, and it divided it perfectly by 31. So yay to Michael, because I'm so glad he was able to figure out the math on that, because it was a little bit mind-blowing for me. All right, y'all, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue stenciling on all of our numbers. And again, I am just using some black chalk paint to do this and a stippling brush. And one thing that I think is very important is to pounce your paint. Do not brush your paint. If you brush, you risk the paint getting up underneath your stencil and getting some bleed through. And here, y'all, I did make a big giant blunder. I smeared all of my paint on this when it was still wet, and I ran my hand across it. So I'm just going to take it out to the shop and sand that off and then repaint this number 25. All right, so now we're going to move on to putting the months on our board. And again, you want to use your grid to do this, and I am using the 15-inch grid. So y'all, when you print this pattern out, it is very important that these grids pieces are printed to their exact size, because if they're not, the math will not work at all on this, and all of your sections won't be correct. The math just won't be right. So I hope you understand that. I hope that made sense to y'all. Okay, so one thing that I figured out when I was doing the days of the month was to paint every other one. So I put January down, skip February, put March down, skip April, and did May. And that gave the paint a little bit of time to dry before I moved on, and I didn't smear anything. It worked out a lot better, because when I was doing the numbers, because they were so close together, I did get a little smearing. And so that helped eliminate the smearing by just doing every other one and then coming back in and filling in the blank spaces. All righty, y'all. Man, I've been talking a lot. Okay, so we have all of these rounds painted now, and we are ready to assemble this. So one thing that I need to mention, it is really important for you to paint all of your pieces before you assemble this. So now we're going to go ahead and assemble our bracket, and we're just going to start by gluing. This is the back piece of the bracket, so this is the piece that will hang on the wall. So we're going to glue our dowel in, and then Michael did pre-drill this and then reinforced it with a screw. So here we are just drilling some holes. We're going to make a keyhole in the back of this to hang it on the wall. You don't have to do this part. You could actually just use like picture hangers or any kind of hanger, like a a U joint or a D joint or whatever those, a D ring, that's what those are called. You could, not a joint. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, you could do D rings to do this as well, but we just went ahead and did the keyholes. I don't know. I just feel like they hang a little bit more securely. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and put our side pieces on. And again, we are using wood glue to glue all of our pieces together, and then we will come in and reinforce that with some brad nails. So now we can go ahead and install our wood rounds. So we're going to start with the largest wood round first. So our 19-inch wood round goes first, then the 15-inch, and then the 9-inch. So we have the days of the month on the large round, that goes in first. Then our months on the medium round goes in second, and then our weekdays on the smallest round, which goes on last. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and complete this bracket by placing the front piece. So we're going to add some wood glue here onto both end pieces. And Michael likes to spread his out a little bit, so I don't know, I never do that, but I guess it does eliminate some of it gushing out. So we'll go ahead and place that on after we've placed some glue on, and then we'll go ahead and reinforce this with some brad nails. All right, y'all, to finish this off, we are going to go ahead and pre-drill a hole here. This is, and Michael did mark this ahead of time, and this is going to be what we reinforce that the top piece to the center dowel. Oh my gosh, y'all, we did it. We have completed this really cool perpetual wall hanging calendar. I think this turned out so cool. I just really love it. I think it's got a fun industrial flair to it, a little bit of farmhouse to it, but it could also go really well with contemporary. So I love how this turned out, and all of the components, they actually move like they're supposed to. And I do think over time, this will probably loosen up a little bit and they will move a little more freely. What do y'all think? I think it turned out so cool. This project is also going to be a perpetual calendar, only more designed for a desktop. So the first step is going to be all the math, all the measurements, choosing your wood, and then cutting all the pieces. Here, Michael is working on the little box that's going to house all of our calendar pieces, and he's just designing the sides for me of the box, so he's kind of just freehanding them. But I want y'all to know that the pattern for this project will also be available for y'all as a free download, and I will have that link for y'all in the description box. Okay, so he got his little design all drawn out, and now he's taking it over to the scroll saw and getting this piece cut out. And this is the side pieces for our little box that houses the calendar pieces. So we ended up using some plywood to cut all of the pieces for our little box out. And I didn't really like being able to see, you know, all the glue up on the plywood. So Michael is putting some edge banding on this for me, and we edge banded the tops of the side pieces and then just the tops of each front and back cap. Okay, can I just say that this edge banding is really cool stuff. This is a great invention, y'all. I wish I was the one that had invented it. So this edge banding did come pre-glued, so you literally just iron it right onto your wood piece. And then after it's been ironed on, Michael did come in with his little rolly thing to just make sure it's really well adhered, and then we will come in and cut off any excess pieces and then clean up the edges as well. And Michael's just using a chisel to do this. As we all know, part of any woodworking project involves sanding. It's everyone's least favorite chore. I really don't enjoy sanding. I mean, it's not so horrible, especially with power tools, but it's just dusty and messy. So I think that's the part that I don't like. But anyway, we've come in, we've sanded all of our pieces, and now we're going to go ahead and start by assembling our little box first. This is the box that's going to house all of our calendar pieces. So Michael has glued this together on the two edges. We're gluing the back to the side piece first, and then he came back in and reinforced this with some brad nails, and then we will just repeat this same exact process for the other side. So now we have the two side pieces, the back and the bottom, securely held into place. So now we're going to go ahead and place that front piece. And again, we are using some wood glue to do this. I think it's just always a good rule of thumb to wood glue all of your pieces together before using the brad nails. And if you don't have a brad nailer, you could use tiny little screws here, or you could even use actual nail and hammer to do this. Just make sure you use small nails so that you don't run the risk of splitting your wood. So here's our box all completed, and now it is ready to house all of our calendar pieces. So do y'all know where we're going with this now? All right, so I've brought all the pieces back into the studio and I have painted them all. And I used some antiquing glaze to paint some of the pieces and just white chalk paint to paint others. I really like how this box came out. It turned out so pretty. I kind of just like the rustic look of it. All right, so here are our stencils, and I did go ahead and cut these out on my silhouette cutter. I did not put these are not included in the pattern, and I did that just because I figured I would let y'all create your own in case you want different fonts or whatnot. Okay, so here are all of our pieces. So these two longer pieces are for our days of the week. And then the middle pieces are for the months. And then our shorter pieces are for the days of the month. Okay, y'all. So we did make a little boo-boo here. And for the months, there are supposed to be 3 of those boards. And we made a boo-boo and only cut 2. However, the pattern is designed for 3 of them. So the sizes and everything are designed to house 3 of those month boards. All right, so let's go ahead and start stenciling. And y'all know the rule. When you're stenciling, you want to use a stenciling brush and pounce your paint on in a pouncing motion. If you brush it on, you run the risk of getting bleed through under your stencil. Where with the pouncing motion, you get a nice, clean, perfect painting job underneath on your stencil. Oh goodness, I have no idea what I was trying to say there. Okay, so the other thing I want to say really quick here, and then I'll quit rambling for a little while, is when you are painting on your numbers, make sure that you flip your board upside down, because that's the way this is designed, so that you can flip your numbers back and forth. So you want to make sure that before you put the other one, you flip it. So one should be right side up and the other should be upside down. Okay, so you can kind of see what I meant here by one is right side up and the other is upside down. It's very important that you do that correctly, or they won't work right in your little calendar box when you go to flip all of your numbers for each day. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue painting on the numbers, and then we'll move on to painting or stenciling on the months and the weekdays. And again, I'm just going to use my stenciling brush, and I'm using some black chalk paint to do this. I did use some transfer paper to transfer my stencils, and so I rub it on and then peel up that transfer tape, and then we can go ahead and stencil. Another thing that I really like to do is almost immediately after I stencil on my paint, I do lift up my stencil. I have noticed in the past that if I let it dry for a little while, the stencil kind of dries with it. And then when you peel it up, it has a tendency to peel up some of the wood underneath or some of your paint. So I do tend to peel my stencil up almost immediately after stenciling on the paint. Alrighty guys, so here are all of our pieces completed, and I will have the pattern, part of the pattern is the way I lined out all of these numbers onto our little skinny boards, because there is a pattern that you have to follow so that they all work together correctly. So there's all of our numbers, and then here's my my months missing. We're missing 4 because we only cut 2 boards instead of 3. So don't make that mistake. Do as I say, not as I do on this one. And then we've got all of our weekdays, and so we can go ahead and tuck them nice and neatly into our box, and that finishes off this project.
Alrighty, my darling friends, what do we think of our calendars? Oh my gosh, I love them. I think they turned out so good, and I know I'm going to enjoy these all year long. The big round one, the big round perpetual one, is probably hands down my favorite. Although I won't lie, that one was tricky. It was tricky to put together. Not only were there a lot of pieces and parts, but there was a tremendous amount of math involved to figure that out. And I don't know about y'all, but I am not so good with math. So I am so thankful that Michael was willing to jump in and give me a helping hand. Well, actually, I shouldn't say a helping hand. He pretty much built the whole thing. So I am thankful for him. We do make a good team because I come up with all these fun ideas and these designs, and Michael is such a good sport about just jumping out into the shop and whipping them up with me. And we always have fun working out there together. So we had a good time working on these. Y'all will have to let me know which of the two was your favorite. Alrighty, my dear friends, I guess that is it for today. I always hate it when our time together comes to an end, but the good news is we will be back again next week with more great projects. So I will see you all again next week. Until then, y'all take care, and I will see you soon. Bye.